Have you ever wondered why some women seem to wield an invisible force, a gravity that draws attention, desire, and even quiet fear, without a single overt effort? It is not merely beauty nor charm nor the artful use of words. It is something deeper, older, a vibration resonating from the uncharted chambers of the psyche, the dark feminine, the shadowed core that Carl Jung described as the seat of instinct, power, and untamed wisdom. This is the archetype that whispers in silence, shaping the dynamics of attraction, desire, and dominance in ways most minds cannot articulate, yet most hearts respond to unconsciously. It is the part of a woman that is unbound by approval, that dances with her fears rather than fleeing from them, and that knows the intoxicating tension between presence and mystery. Imagine her walking through the world with a calm intensity, each movement measured yet unconsciously magnetic. She is not loud. She does not need to declare her power, for her essence communicates directly with the unconscious mind of those around her. Men sense it before they can articulate it. A woman who has integrated her shadow, who has seen her fears, her rage, her longing, and embraced them without guilt or shame. This is not aggression nor manipulation. It is the alignment of the internal world with external presence. It is an energy that operates beyond superficial attraction, tapping into a primal Jungian current that stirs both awe and desire. Her shadow is not hidden. It is acknowledged, and thus it commands respect. Many women, however, never reach this depth, ensnared by external validation, the hunger for approval, or the quiet torment of unhealed trauma. The psyche, like an ocean, contains depths that are both terrifying and liberating. Those who avoid exploring these depths remain on the shore, their power latent, diluted, often misdirected into relationships, attention, or the performance of femininity, rather than the embodiment of it. The dark feminine does not perform. She radiates. She has learned the essential truth that desire cannot be manufactured, that attraction is not coercion, and that surrendering to one's own internal gravity is more potent than chasing another's acknowledgement. Observe the patterns of attachment, both in yourself and in others, and you will see how the unintegrated shadow manifests. A woman who has not faced her rage may unconsciously provoke men into proving worthiness, seeking validation to fill voids left by neglect, trauma, or self-doubt. A woman who has not faced her fear of rejection may capitulate too easily, abandoning her own power to secure fleeting approval. In contrast, the woman who has touched her darkness, the jealousy, the resentment, the shame, the longing, has transformed it into a mirror. She sees clearly which desires are genuine and which are projections of others. She discerns when a man is drawn to her essence versus when he is merely chasing a reflection of his own ego. This clarity is intoxicating to those who are capable of recognizing it and disarming to those who are not. Do you recognize this pattern in your own life? Perhaps it is the man who cannot commit, whose words are hollow, whose attention flickers unpredictably. Perhaps it is the constant need to justify your presence, to explain your value, or to dilute your own desires in the hopes of being enough. The truth is, the psyche responds to authenticity, not performance. And when a woman steps into her shadow, she becomes an enigma wrapped in elegance, a paradox of softness and steel, vulnerability and sovereignty. Her value is inherent, not contingent. Her presence commands attention not through seduction alone, but through the quiet confidence of someone who has survived the chaos of their own unconscious and emerged with an unshakable sense of self. This is not a superficial empowerment. It is the labor of inner work, shadow integration, emotional alchemy, and the daily confrontation with one's own projections. Marcus Aurelius wrote that men must govern themselves before governing others. In a parallel sense, the woman who embodies the dark feminine governs her inner world before seeking validation from the external. She observes, she discerns, she sets boundaries with the ease of a river flowing around rocks. Uncomplicated, natural, and inevitable. She understands that the tension between desire and attachment is not weakness, but a crucible in which her power is refined. She does not flinch when her worth is challenged, nor does she need constant reassurance. Her ego, tempered through introspection and honesty, radiates a calm authority that feels magnetic and unknowable at once. The male unconscious is wired to respond to what is authentic and deep. Surface-level seduction is fleeting. Shadow-driven presence is enduring. The dark feminine is attuned not just to her desires, but to the underlying currents of human psychology. the unspoken needs, the unconscious drives, the fears, and insecurities. She can navigate these without being ensnared, because she is firmly grounded in her own center. When she speaks, her words resonate with the weight of self-possession. When she moves, it is with a rhythm dictated by internal harmony, rather than societal expectation. She is a reflection of the archetypal anima, a force that is equal parts creation and destruction, attraction and detachment, comfort and challenge. In understanding the dark feminine, one begins to see the patterns of life differently, the repetition of failed relationships, the cycles of desire and disillusionment, the projection of unresolved shadows onto others. To awaken this energy within oneself is to claim a sovereign authority over one's inner world, to step into a dimension where validation is chosen, not borrowed, and where power is exercised quietly yet unmistakably. It is the ultimate form of psychological mastery, a dance between the conscious and unconscious, the seen and unseen, the feared and embraced. Most women drift through life carrying fragments of other people's expectations, social conditioning, and cultural narratives, rarely pausing to examine the weight they place upon their own shoulders. The dark feminine refuses this drift. She is a woman who has gazed into her own abyss and discovered not terror, but clarity. Each scar, each wound, each heartbreak becomes a map, guiding her toward deeper self-understanding. She does not flinch at the shadows she finds there. She invites them to tea, listens to their stories, and extracts the lessons that shape her into someone unassailable. In doing so, she reclaims the authority over her own psyche, turning vulnerability into an instrument of power and emotional insight. The psyche is inherently dualistic. Light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, they all coexist, often in conflict, often in silent dialogue. The dark feminine exists precisely in the spaces where this tension is greatest. She is comfortable with contradiction, embodying both the nurturing and the destructive, the tender and the formidable. A man drawn to her senses this duality even if he cannot name it, for it resonates at a level below words. Attraction in this context is not a transaction. It is a recognition, a response to the integrity of someone who has faced the fullness of her own existence. This is why her presence can feel like both a balm and a challenge, inviting yet elusive, comforting yet unsettling. Consider how many relationships falter, not from lack of love, but from projection. Men project unresolved needs, fears, and desires onto women, and women often project their longing for validation onto men. The woman who has integrated her shadow does not enter this trap. She sees projection for what it is, and she neither clings to it nor reacts defensively. Instead, she observes, she discerns, she chooses. In this discernment lies her freedom. Her energy does not bend to accommodate unearned admiration. It moves in rhythm with her own truth. She is aware of the unconscious psychology at play around her, yet she remains sovereign, untouched by illusions or manipulations that would sway a less grounded woman. Trauma, too, plays a pivotal role in shaping the dark feminine. Where wounds remain unexamined, they fester, dictating patterns of attachment, choice, and self-worth. But when trauma is acknowledged and integrated, it transforms into a wellspring of insight and resilience. The woman who confronts her past, who speaks to her pain, embraces her losses, and understands the subtle mechanisms of her own survival, emerges stronger, magnetic, and profoundly alive. Her presence is a testament to the alchemy of suffering turned into power, a living embodiment of the Jungian principle that what is not faced will be repeated until it is. The integration of the dark feminine requires relentless self-examination. It is not a fleeting practice, but a lifelong commitment to honesty, introspection, and emotional discipline. Stoic philosophy, particularly the writings of Epictetus and Seneca, can serve as a framework here. The recognition that our control lies not over external events but over our responses. That peace arises not from avoidance but from mastery over our internal reactions. A woman who internalizes this principle begins to release the need for external validation entirely. She no longer measures herself against someone else's approval or affection. Her value is inherent, untethered, and undeniable. She becomes a force that others cannot help but acknowledge, whether they wish to or not. You may have noticed this in your own interactions. The man who seems captivated yet hesitant, who vacillates between admiration and withdrawal. It is not confusion on his part, but a reflection of the clarity and equilibrium you have achieved. When a woman operates from the center of her own psyche, When she holds both shadow and light without fear, she becomes an irresistible presence. She embodies an authority that is not demanded but recognized, and in this recognition lies her power. The dark feminine is not passive. She is active in the most profound sense, shaping the emotional landscape around her by remaining anchored in herself. This energy also manifests in choice. She does not settle for mediocrity or convenience. She evaluates each relationship, each connection, each engagement through the lens of her own values and psychological alignment. The ego's need for reassurance does not dictate her actions. Instead, her inner compass, honed by self-knowledge and shadow work, guides her. To those unaccustomed to this level of self-possession, she may seem mysterious or even intimidating. Yet to those attuned to authenticity, she is radiant, a figure of rare and commanding presence. In the intimate domain, the dark feminine transforms the dynamics of attraction from superficial exchanges into profound energetic interplay. Desire is no longer about persuasion or effort, but about recognition of essence. Men are compelled not by what she says or does, but by who she is at her core. Someone who has reconciled with her darkness, who knows her worth, and who radiates that awareness with quiet, unshakable force. In this space, emotional manipulation has no purchase. The dance of attraction becomes mutual, conscious, and deeply satisfying. She becomes a lodestar, drawing others toward emotional truth while remaining inviolably centered. Some women never learn the language of their own psyche, mistaking noise for guidance, fleeting attention for love, and reaction for power. The dark feminine, however, understands that true influence is not enforced, it is emanated. Her power is subtle yet undeniable, like the tide shaping cliffs over centuries, imperceptible in moments but transformative in the sweep of time. She recognizes that relationships are mirrors, reflecting the unresolved shadows of those she encounters. And she uses this awareness to navigate the currents of connection without losing herself. Each interaction becomes a choice, a test not of seduction but of alignment, a discernment between those who resonate with her energy and those who are drawn to the void of projection. She knows that the male psyche, often unexamined and impulsive, responds instinctively to authenticity and presence. Attraction is rooted in an unconscious dialogue, a subtle interplay of power, shadow, and desire. When a woman has integrated her own darkness, she communicates in this dialogue without artifice. She neither chases nor pleads. She simply exists in the fullness of her essence. And paradoxically, it is in this nonchalance, this unwavering self-possession, that she exerts the strongest pull. The allure of the dark feminine is not constructed. It is the natural byproduct of a mind and soul that have faced themselves fully, without flinching, without compromise. This journey into shadow is rarely easy. The ego resists, clinging to comfort, certainty, and familiar patterns. Trauma surfaces as resistance, reminding her of vulnerabilities long buried. Yet each encounter with pain, each confrontation with fear, strengthens the architecture of her psyche. Jung described the process of individuation as the reconciliation of opposites within the self, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow. The dark feminine embodies this reconciliation. She is aware that desire, rage, love, fear, and longing are not enemies to suppress but energies to understand, integrate, and wield with conscious intent. The woman who has mastered this does not simply exist within her life. She authors it with psychological acuity and emotional sovereignty. It is here, in the synthesis of shadow and light, that the dark feminine discovers the art of choice. She chooses when to give, when to withhold, when to speak, when to remain silent. Every decision is informed by clarity rather than need, by power rather than fear, by essence rather than expectation. To those who have never encountered such authority, it may appear as mystery or caprice. To those attuned to the deeper currents of human behavior, it is a luminous magnetic truth. She is the embodiment of the principle that the most potent influence is not exerted, but radiated, an energy that shapes reality around her without a word, without coercion, without compromise. In her presence, emotional games collapse. The need for manipulation, the attempts to control, the unconscious coercions, all falter before someone who has mastered herself. The dark feminine's authority does not derive from domination, but from mastery of her own internal state. Her calm amidst chaos, her discernment amidst desire, her equilibrium amidst projection, all communicate an unspoken code. She will not be diminished, misread, or misused. She is a lodestar for those who seek depth, a mirror for those willing to face their own unconscious, and a challenge for those unprepared to confront their reflection. And this is precisely what makes her irresistible, an enigmatic balance of comfort and confrontation, allure and autonomy. You may recognize in yourself moments when your own presence was diluted by fear, anxiety, or longing. Perhaps you bent to fit someone else's expectations, seeking approval or affection at the cost of your own inner alignment. The woman who embodies the dark feminine learns to resist this urge, to stand firm in her sovereignty, and to understand that her worth is not contingent upon the acknowledgement of others. This is the core of psychological empowerment, a liberation from the transactional nature of attention and desire, a recognition that attraction is an energetic resonance, not a negotiation. Her mastery of self extends into every domain of life. In career and friendships and intimacy, she approaches interactions with awareness, insight, and presence. She does not bend to please, yet she does not repel with arrogance. Instead, she draws with clarity, attracting what aligns and releasing what does not. The male unconscious responds with intensity to this alignment, for it mirrors a truth often denied in the external world: the raw, authentic integration of mind, heart, and shadow. In relationships, this manifests not as gamesmanship or control, but as the natural equilibrium of someone who knows her worth and acts from it consistently. She does not chase, she does not plead, she does not compromise her essence for temporary approval. She simply chooses, and her choices ripple outward with magnetic consequence. In this dynamic, desire becomes conscious. The interplay of attraction and detachment is no longer confusing or painful. It is refined, deliberate, and illuminating. The dark feminine knows that her power lies not in bending another's will, but in standing fully in her own. That the gravitation of energy cannot be forced, only cultivated within. Her presence becomes a language unto itself, a dialogue of shadows and light, depth and discernment, authenticity and mystery. Those who encounter it feel both drawn and tested, challenged and comforted, compelled to respond to an essence they cannot fabricate, manipulate, or fully comprehend. The dark feminine thrives in paradox. She is at once tender and untouchable, nurturing yet untamed, open yet impenetrable. This duality is not accidental. It is the product of deep psychological excavation, the reconciliation of internal opposites, the deliberate integration of the shadow that many fear to confront. She does not fear discomfort, for she has learned that true growth resides in the tension between her light and her darkness. Each confrontation with fear, each encounter with rejection, each negotiation of desire and boundaries strengthens the architecture of her psyche. In this refinement, she becomes both magnetic and untouchable, a presence that commands attention without demanding it, a force that is felt before it is understood. Her power also rests in awareness of projection. Men, in particular, are prone to projecting their unresolved fears, desires, and ambitions onto women, unconsciously seeking to resolve their own inner conflicts externally. The woman who has cultivated her dark feminine does not internalize these projections. She observes them, discerns their origin, and interacts from a place of clarity rather than reaction. She understands the distinction between authentic attraction and projection, between genuine connection and unconscious need. This insight is liberating, for it allows her to navigate relationships with sovereignty, to choose alignment over compulsion, and to resist the trap of validation seeking that ensnares so many others. Shadow work, the cornerstone of her evolution, transforms trauma into wisdom. Every wound, every heartbreak, every instance of rejection is not suppressed or ignored. It is examined, understood, and integrated. Jungian psychology teaches that what is not confronted in the unconscious will manifest in repetitive patterns, yet the dark feminine disrupts these cycles. She engages with her pain actively, turning the raw material of suffering into fuel for self-possession. The result is a psyche that is resilient, a woman who is neither brittle nor reactive, but deeply anchored in the knowledge of her own worth and the inevitability of her own power. You may notice her in the subtle currents of human interaction: a glance that lingers, a silence that speaks volumes, a boundary that is neither brittle nor inviting to compromise. These are the hallmarks of the dark feminine in motion. She does not need to announce herself. Her energy carries authority. Men sense it instinctively, often before they can articulate why they are drawn, repelled, or intrigued. Attraction at this level is energetic, unconscious, and profound. It is not a game of manipulation, but an exchange of recognition. The psyche responding to integrity, the unconscious mind acknowledging authenticity, and desire arising naturally from the resonance of presence. In the interpersonal realm, she chooses with deliberation. Relationships are no longer about filling voids or meeting unexamined needs. They are reflections of alignment, resonance, and psychological compatibility. The dark feminine evaluates not only what is offered to her, but the energetic and emotional patterns that accompany it. She recognizes when a connection is reciprocal and when it is imbalanced, when a desire is authentic and when it is projection. This discernment is her freedom, her safeguard, and her authority. It is a refusal to participate in the unconscious chaos of dependency and codependence, and a commitment to a higher standard of self-possession and integrity. Her sovereignty also manifests in emotional equilibrium. She experiences desire, attachment, and longing fully, yet she is not enslaved by them. Stoic principles become allies in this journey. She learns that control resides in response, not circumstance, that peace arises not from avoidance, but from mastery of one's internal state. The dark feminine maintains a calm center amidst the turbulence of emotion, a stillness that communicates power far more convincingly than effort or aggression ever could. This is not detachment in the sense of coldness, but detachment as clarity, a clear separation between self and projection, between need and choice, between fear and action. Every interaction she engages in is transformed by this awareness. Desire becomes conscious, boundaries are respected without negotiation, and attraction flows from recognition rather than pursuit. Men respond not to the superficialities of beauty or charm, but to the gravitational pull of authenticity and self-possession. Her energy does not coerce. It illuminates, attracting what is aligned and repelling what is not. This is the essence of her magnetism, the integration of shadow, the command of presence, and the mastery of inner life. She embodies an archetypal force that is simultaneously nurturing and formidable, accessible and mysterious, tender and commanding. In this synthesis of shadow and light, trauma and triumph, longing and self-possession, she discovers the alchemy of true power. The dark feminine is not a construct, a role, or a performance. It is the embodiment of self-knowledge and the courage to inhabit it fully. She does not seek to bend the world to her will through manipulation or compromise. She shapes it through presence, clarity, and choice. Her power is invisible yet tangible, subtle yet absolute, psychological yet profoundly felt. Those who encounter it are confronted with both awe and recognition, challenged to examine themselves, inspired to mirror integrity, and inevitably drawn to the gravity of her being. She moves through life as if through a current that both carries and tests her, an interplay of force and flow, strength and subtlety. Every decision, every glance, every pause is intentional, yet it carries the fluid grace of instinct, as if she is simultaneously navigating the conscious and unconscious worlds. The dark feminine understands the delicate balance between presence and mystery, knowing that to reveal too much too soon is to diminish the magnetic tension that sustains desire and attention. She is an enigma, not by accident, but by the careful cultivation of her inner landscape, a landscape shaped by shadow work, introspection, and emotional alchemy. She recognizes the power in detachment, not coldness, but a profound freedom from the chains of external validation. To the uninitiated, this may appear as aloofness or indifference, yet it is neither. It is sovereignty. She does not need to prove herself, to explain her value, or to negotiate her worth. The recognition she receives from others is a reflection of her alignment, not a lifeline. This distinction transforms relationships, shifting the energy from dependence to resonance, from uncertainty to clarity. Men feel this immediately, whether consciously or unconsciously. They are drawn to her not because of what she offers them, but because of the integrity she radiates, the completeness of her presence, and the depth of her self-possession. Her mastery of shadow work allows her to navigate projections with ease. The unresolved fears, desires, and insecurities of those around her no longer dictate her choices or destabilize her equilibrium. She sees these projections as signals, mirrors of unconscious material, and uses them as tools to gauge alignment and authenticity. In doing so, she transcends the reactive patterns that ensnare so many others. Remaining anchored in her own center, while the chaos of external expectations swirls around her. This clarity is magnetic. It draws those capable of reflection and repels those bound by superficiality or unresolved need. Trauma, once a source of vulnerability, becomes her crucible. She has faced rejection, abandonment, and disappointment, not to be hardened or cynical, but to refine the architecture of her psyche. Each scar carries wisdom, each heartbreak a lesson, each challenge an invitation to greater self-possession. Through this alchemy of experience, she transforms pain into power, vulnerability into insight, and emotional depth into a gravitational force that commands attention and respect. This is the essence of the dark feminine, an energy forged in the fire of lived experience, tempered by reflection and wielded with conscious authority. In the intimate sphere, she operates from choice rather than compulsion. Desire is reciprocal, not transactional. Attention is conscious, not coerced. She discerns between those who resonate with her essence and those who are drawn to illusions or projections. Boundaries are maintained with grace and firmness, a reflection of her internal stability rather than external negotiation. The interplay of attraction becomes a dance of mutual recognition, a subtle exchange of energies informed by clarity, presence, and psychological alignment. Her power is felt not through force but through authenticity, not through manipulation but through integrity. You may have sensed this in moments of your own life, the subtle influence of a presence that commands attention without demanding it, the magnetic pull of someone who is grounded in self-knowledge and unshaken by external chaos. The dark feminine embodies this principle fully. Her authority is not enforced, it is emanated. Her energy does not chase, it attracts. Her confidence does not bristle, it radiates. She has mastered the paradox of being both accessible and untouchable, tender and formidable, present and mysteriously elusive. This mastery of duality is the key to her enduring magnetism, the reason she captivates without effort and commands respect without demand. Her integration of Jungian principles, shadow work, individuation, and conscious alignment, creates a presence that is both psychologically sophisticated and viscerally compelling. She understands the unconscious currents that shape human interaction, the energetic patterns that govern attraction, and the subtle interplay of desire, projection, and recognition. By embodying this understanding, she transforms the ordinary dynamics of relationships into something profound, conscious, and deeply resonant. Every encounter becomes a reflection of inner alignment, a test of authenticity, and an opportunity to exercise sovereignty. In the final analysis, the dark feminine is not a fleeting state or a role adopted for effect. It is the lived embodiment of self-mastery, shadow integration, and emotional authority. She is a lodestar, illuminating the path for those willing to confront their own unconscious, while challenging those unprepared to face their reflection. Her magnetism is eternal because it is rooted not in manipulation or superficiality, but in the profound psychological truth of a woman who knows herself fully, embraces her darkness, and radiates her integrated power into the world. She is both a mirror and a guide, a force that shapes the emotional and unconscious landscapes around her, while remaining anchored in the absolute clarity of her own worth. The dark feminine ultimately teaches the language of liberation. She shows that the truest power does not reside in conquest, possession, or manipulation, but in presence, clarity, and the mastery of one's own inner world. She is a woman who has endured the cycles of attachment and abandonment, the oscillations between desire and fear, and the tumult of unprocessed emotion, and emerged with a sovereignty that is quiet yet undeniable. Her power is neither performative nor reactive. It is the natural consequence of self-possession, shadow integration, and the unwavering acknowledgement of her own value. This is the archetypal force that compels recognition without demanding it, that draws attraction without effort, and that commands respect without aggression. She operates within a world that often misunderstands her, mistaking her independence for aloofness, her discernment for pride, and her calm for indifference. Yet these misinterpretations cannot shake her, for she is anchored not in the perception of others but in the reality of herself. The dark feminine is aware that external forces are fleeting and unreliable, while the internal foundation of self-awareness, shadow mastery, and emotional sovereignty is permanent and self-sustaining. In relationships, this awareness allows her to navigate desire and intimacy with grace, to recognize authentic resonance versus projection, and to act from alignment rather than need. Every interaction becomes a deliberate choice, a conscious engagement rather than an unconscious reaction. Her magnetic presence stems from a profound internal equilibrium. She does not rely on the validation of others to define her worth. She carries it inherently. Men are drawn to her not because she seeks to please, but because she radiates an authenticity and completeness that cannot be fabricated. The unconscious recognizes this power instinctively. It is a gravitational pull that cannot be resisted, a resonance that bypasses rational thought and taps directly into instinctual recognition. Those who are attuned to this frequency find themselves captivated, while those unaligned sense the depth of her sovereignty and often recoil. This polarity, so natural and unforced, becomes a defining element of her allure. The interplay of attraction, projection, and choice is a central principle in her world. She sees clearly when desire is genuine, when attention is authentic, and when attachment is a reflection of unresolved shadows. By understanding these dynamics, she no longer participates in the chaos of unexamined emotional patterns. Instead, she navigates with intention, integrity, and presence. Her discernment is an extension of her self-mastery, a reflection of the depth of her shadow work, and a manifestation of the equilibrium she maintains within herself. This allows her to engage in relationships not as a source of dependency or validation, but as an arena of resonance, alignment, and mutual recognition. Her mastery extends to the intimate, the social, and the professional realms alike. In every sphere, she brings the same blend of shadow-integrated awareness, psychological acuity, and sovereign presence. Her energy reshapes dynamics subtly yet profoundly, influencing interactions through clarity, integrity, and internal power. Where others may react, she observes. Where others may chase, she chooses. Where others may compromise, she aligns. This deliberate engagement is not an imposition, but a natural consequence of her self-possession. She becomes a force of transformation, not through coercion, but through example and energetic clarity. Through this journey, the dark feminine discovers a profound freedom, liberation from external expectation, liberation from the need for approval, and liberation from the chaos of projection and emotional dependency. She is a woman who knows the contours of her own mind, the rhythm of her own heart, and the depth of her own shadow. She has cultivated the internal authority to act in alignment with her values, the emotional resilience to withstand misalignment, and the psychological sophistication to discern authenticity in others. Her life is a reflection of conscious choice rather than reaction, a testament to the power of self-mastery and shadow integration. Finally, in embracing the dark feminine, she attains an inner peace that is both fierce and gentle, an equilibrium that radiates outward and reshapes her world. She moves through life with a quiet sovereignty, a presence that commands attention without demand, a power that is felt rather than demonstrated, and a wisdom that is recognized instinctively by those who encounter her. The integration of her shadow, the mastery of her emotions, and the clarity of her inner compass coalesce into an authority that is magnetic, sovereign, and enduring. The woman who embodies this archetype is not subject to the whims of others, nor does she bend to fleeting desires. She acts from alignment, presence, and the certainty of her own worth. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. End.